How do organisms reproduce? Session 2. In this module, we are going to learn about the generation of variations and its importance. In the last module, we had learned that the basic event in reproduction is creation of a DNA copy by the reproducing cell, and it does it with the help of chemical reactions. The cells has a nucleus. Inside the nucleus there are thread-like structures called as chromosomes, and the chromosomes have the DNA, which has the information to make our body designs. This is a picture depicting DNA copy. In this picture we can see a pre-existing DNA gives rise to two daughter DNAs. We can see new strands has been produced from the pre-existing strands. And these new daughter DNAs has to be separated from each other. But if the cell which has produced a DNA copy just pushes out the DNA copy will not give rise to a new organism. It has to produce, along with the DNA copy, the whole cellular apparatus which is needed for the survival of that particular DNA. So in this picture we can see a cell dividing into two daughter cells along with the copied DNA. In this beginning we can see a single cell with a single copy of DNA, and this DNA gets replicated or copied as it goes forward, as it is getting divided, and ultimately we can see two daughter cells, each with a copy of DNA, So the two daughter cells, they are similar to each other. We can see they are similar to each other, but they are never identical, because the DNA copying, as we told, is a chemical reaction, but actually it is a biochemical reaction because it is taking place in a living system, and such reactions are not completely accurate, or it is not completely reliable. Hence, there can be errors when a DNA is getting copied from a pre-existing one. Hence, the DNA copies produced will be similar but will not be identical due to the errors which is produced at the time of DNA copying. And these errors which is caused are called as variations. Is it clear? So when DNA is getting copied from a pre-existing one, it causes errors because no biochemical reactions are completely accurate or reliable, and errors are generated, and these errors results in variations. Variation means the degree of differences that are generated. In some cases, the newly copied DNA will have drastic variations, and thus it cannot survive in the cell apparatus, and thus the cell will die. And I'll just explain to you once again. When the DNA is getting copied and an error has generated to such an extent that it is very much different from the original one or from the parent cell, then that drastic change DNA cannot survive in that cell, and then it will be wiped out or it will die off. Whereas some variations generated will not be that drastic, and it will help that cell to survive, or such individuals will be able to survive who are having favorable variations. So variations generated during reproduction, which is caused due to errors in DNA copy, are the basis of evolution. Variation are the basis of evolution, or it will give us a survival existence or a survival value. What is the importance of variation? The variation is very important and beneficial for species, as it allows a species to adapt to a changing environment. Can you imagine that their environment will always be static or stable? It will keep on changing, and in this changing environment, for the survival of the species, these variations are very important, and variations are beneficial to a species than to an individual, because populations of organisms, a group of organisms, fill well-defined spaces in the ecosystem using their ability to reproduce, isn't it? Every organisms, we find a very comfortable place where we can survive, and in that particular region or in that particular ecosystem, they adapt well and they start to reproduce and increase in number. However, these places will change because of reasons beyond the control of the organisms and could even wipe out the entire population. So, any change in the environment can possibly wipe out the entire population of species. Whereas, due to errors in DNA coupling, some variations have been generated. Okay, in a very few individuals of a population, and they will be having a chance to survive in a changed environment. And those variations or those organisms who have not obtained this variation will be wiped out when they are not able to adapt to the environmental change. For example, if there is a population of bacteria living in a temperate waters, okay, they are comfortably living in that particular ecosystem, and suppose the water temperature was to be increased by global warming. That is, there is a change in the environment. What is the environment change? It is increase in the temperature of the water, which is caused as a result of global warming. And most of the bacteria would die. And who will die? Those who have not obtained that variation. But a few heat resistant variants, that is, some of them would have acquired a variation in which they are able to resist high temperature or high heat. And these variants who are able to resist this temperature would survive and grow further, and they will reproduce and increase in number. So variation is thus very useful for the survival of species over time. So dear children, in this module we learned about the process of DNA copying, in which the two daughter cells or the daughter DNA will not be identical to each other even though they are similar, and the errors generated at the time of DNA copying will result in variation, and these variations are very much important to drive the process of evolution, and it also helps an organism to survive in a changed environment. Thank you.